Hello class, I am Wesley Fink, and I will be discussing how General George Washington's leadership during the American Revolution proved to be the difference in the war. A lot has been discussed and analyzed regarding George Washington and his impact as the commanding general during the American Revolution. There are individuals that believe he was inept and not up to the task as demonstrated through his numerous losses at the hands of the British. Some reference his ability to adapt and learn during the course of the conflict as his defining quality as a leader. Yet others point out that his successes were merely luck or acts of providence, and that General George Washington's position and life were all linked by the will of the Lord. Looking into General George Washington's abilities as a leader, I came to the following assessment. General George Washington's demonstrated leadership attributes and competencies during the American Revolution proved to be the difference during the war, and further immortalized his place in history as a successful and capable military leader. To defend this position, I intend to utilize the following references. As we begin to discuss General George Washington's leadership, we must first define what qualities constitute a great leader. The United States Army's Leadership Requirements Model will serve as the backdrop and standard as I discuss General George Washington and his leadership capabilities. This model is broken down into three attributes: character, presence, and intellect. The three competencies leads, develops, and achieves. For this discussion, I am going to focus on the attributes character and intellect, and the competency achieves. When war first broke out, the American Congress held hope that resolve could still be achieved and that peace with Britain was an option. However, they still asked that George Washington take charge of the Continental forces, which he humbly accepted. General George Washington found himself faced with the daunting task of leading not only a group of poorly trained soldiers against the most powerful army in the world, but additionally the burden of leading a nation and Congress that were unaware of how to win a war for independence. The challenges General Washington immediately faced were enough to overwhelm most individuals. However, Washington's capabilities imply that he was not a normal individual. He was a man of providence. As Galatians 6 verse 9 states, "Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up." George Washington was a man of pride and honor, and that held himself to a higher standard. To understand General George Washington's leadership capabilities, we must look at how does one command leadership and convince others to follow. To be an effective leader, one must first possess the desire and the ability to lead others. The manner in which this feat is achieved varies depending upon a multitude of criteria, such as situation, personality, and requirements. Machiavelli's The Prince explains how it can be effective to lead by fear or cruelty in order to achieve one's goals. As the head of the armies, he states, "When a prince is at the head of his armies and must command multitudes of soldiers, then more than ever must he be indifferent to a reputation for cruelty. For without such a reputation, no army was ever held together, nor was it ever fit for combat." However, he also explains, if he finds it necessary to take someone's life, he should do so when there is suitable justification and manifest cause. And in terms of property, excuses for seizing property are never lacking, and indeed, anyone who begins to live by plunder will always find pretext for taking over what belongs to someone else. So how does one command leadership and convince others to follow? One way this can be accomplished is through a high moral character or code of ethics. Soldiers will follow a leader they respect and trust. General George Washington had always been a man of character. Most are familiar with the story of young George chopping down his father's prized cherry tree. As the story goes, when confronted by his father, George responded that he could not tell a lie. He had chopped down the tree. General George Washington's character and ethics would come into play as the Continental Army struggled to feed and clothe its soldiers. Robert Middlecoff's The Glorious Cause explains that after Congress learned of the hunger at Valley Forge, they urged Washington to seize the supplies he needed. He resisted, recognizing that relief of his troops' hunger by such a means would undercut the principles of the Revolution and the political support of the people. Additionally, Washington directed that receipts be provided to individuals for property and rations taken from them by the Continentals on behalf of the force. This proved the opposite of the British Army, which had plundered and pillaged the countryside and cities as they moved. General Washington was simultaneously denying his soldiers the proper necessities while also upholding them to a higher code of character. And at times General Washington was forced to use Machiavelli-style tactics, though, ordering 100 lashes for minor offenses or stringing individuals up for desertion or falling asleep while on guard. General Washington's demonstrated values, ethics, and discipline define his character as a leader. He was the leader his subordinate officers strived to emulate in every way. A leader who has never commanded a force the size of the Continental Army and militia demonstrate the intellect to his subordinates. While General George Washington might not have always been the smartest commander on the field, he proved to be more than capable. His assumptions and intuition regularly proved correct, as he predicted the British moves on New York and Philadelphia, as well as the bewildered attempt to seal off his northern border from the attack in the failed Canadian campaign. His ability to roll with the punches and fight another day demonstrated the understanding that the duration of war lasts more than one day. Stamina, perseverance, and tenacity in the face of adversity are what truly elevates George Washington in his lack of intellect over his far superior British counterparts. As James 1 verse 12 states, "Blessed is the one who perseveres under trial, because having stood the test, that person will receive the crown of life that the Lord has promised to those who love him." As stated in the Leadership Requirements Model, mental agility, judgment, and innovation are key components of the intellect attribute. Living to fight another day allows the Army the opportunity to fight another day. This experience also strengthens soldiers' resolve and resiliency while providing on-the-job training and expertise to the officers and leaders that will need to use these skills in the following battles. The reality that General George Washington was not very successful during the early part of the war brings into question of how is a leader able to achieve if they are unable to win the majority of the battles. General George Washington was a very proud and humble individual, as explained. He understood that his Continentals would need to fight an unconventional war if they were going to have a chance to defend the superior British forces. Through his use of successful information and spy rings, General George Washington was able to get results while improving the performance of his soldiers through superior means. While the ill-advised and dangerous mission to capture Trenton, New Jersey, on Christmas night and on into the next day proved highly successful, it also demonstrated General Washington's high appetite for risk to the British command. Even though his success was short-lived, it still provided some pride amongst the soldiers for future combat. During the winter camp at Valley Forge, Frederick William Augustus Henry Ferdinand or Baron von Steuben as he was more commonly known, had recently arrived in the colonies and was eager to assist General George Washington in any means possible. His expertise in soldiering provided Washington with the training and regiment he had longed for since the beginning of the war. While it was later proven that von Steuben's backstory had been false, his skill and abilities in training and developing the force still proved worthy to the Continental Army. General Washington's ability to find the right individuals further proved his ability to achieve success. His placement of General Nathanael Greene in charge of the Southern forces provided even more proof. It would be easy to determine the flaws of General George Washington and some of his actions and beliefs in his life. His leadership attributes and competencies he demonstrated during the American Revolution, though, have cemented him as a successful and capable military commander. General George Washington's ability to hold the title of commander for the duration of the Revolution, one of the longest wars in American history, further proves his leadership prowess. He was the right individual at the right time, chosen by God during a time of providence.